Hello, I'm Jane Button. Tonight I'll be reporting on industrial problems at the Warkworth mine that could escalate into a national stoppage by Wednesday. Miners and management have clashed over the introduction of an 8.5-hour working day.
For all the news,
Join us tonight
at 6.
Thousands flocked to Erina on the Central Coast this morning for the start of trading at the new Central Coast Fair. Fanfare and celebrations accompanied the opening of the biggest single-level shopping centre in the Southern Hemisphere. A full report in our news.
For all the news, join us tonight at 6.
According to financial advisors, retiring on a lump sum can result in confusion and complications. The area of investment planning can be daunting to those who have had no prior experience or knowledge in the financial field. In Newcastle, some of the major firms carry out retirement workshops for employees who are close to or have just retired. The main aim is to discuss in detail the array of investment options available. Last night, manager of Bain & Company's financial planning division, Mark Smith, began a two-part workshop covering topics such as lump sum payouts, pensions, approved deposit funds, increased bonds and mortgage trusts and friendly societies. And if that sounds confusing, according to the experts, there's no need for concern.
I think basically the major area of confusion is the various terminologies that are thrown around, and also people don't really understand what the various investment alternatives, what they're doing with their monies. I think if they could concentrate not so much on the names and the performance, but what actually happens to their dollars once they're within that investment, they clear away a lot of that confusion.
Export operations at the terminal had been at a standstill since the 13th of this month. Employees refused a management decision to stagger meal breaks so that the terminal could run continuously, avoiding shutdowns. Although members of the Australian Workers' Union accepted the Grain Handling Authority's proposal last Wednesday, the 42 members of the Public Service Association stayed out on strike. The case was taken to the Industrial Commission, where the union claimed that continuous running would result in a hazardous build-up of grain dust. Yesterday, Justice Sweeney said that, in his view, the PSA had not presented a strong enough case, and he could find no good reason why continuous running should not take place. PSA members met in Newcastle late yesterday to consider the directive and, after 2 hours of discussion, voted to accept Justice Sweeney's decision. The strikers resumed work on the afternoon shift. PSA members now plan to appeal against the decision. Secretary of Transport Council Peter Barrick says he believes this time a strong and lasting commitment has been made by both union leaders and employers to save the state's seemingly unpopular industrial reputation. Further talks will take place later this month before the final package is signed. According to Mr Barrick, major investments are going to other states such as South Australia and Queensland, and he believes both unions and employers have recognised the need for an image change with the introduction of a state industrial agreement.
Well, we're looking at a whole range of issues such as public relations, industrial relations, training and retraining, multi-skilling, cross-skilling, vertical skilling, all those issues that we need to come to grips with in a changing society if we're to meet the demands that are being put upon us.
Is it going to be a happy marriage between the unions and employers?
Well, I think time will tell. I think there's a common objective there. I think you can never eliminate the absolute conflict between labour and capital, but certainly what we have here is an attempt to minimise it, and I think it's incumbent upon us both to ensure that that happens.
Tomorrow's threatened national coal strike has been averted following Warkworth Mining's decision to withdraw an overtime directive. Meanwhile, Coal and Allied has announced a 2-year freeze on retrenchments if the state government cuts charges and the unions change some work practices.
For all the news, join us tonight at 6.
The Diploma of Aviation is designed to link academic studies with practical flight training. The University of Newcastle and the Civil Air Training Academy at Cessnock will now come under the umbrella of the newly formed Institute of Aviation. The institute will be made up of experts from the industry, including major Australian airlines and the Pilots Federation. Its main role will be to coordinate the academic teaching program with practical flying. The university has appointed a leading expert in aviation to spearhead the new venture, Australia's first tertiary-based aviation course. For the past decade, Professor Telfer has been active in research and teaching in aviation science, developing instructor manuals and journals which have been adopted both in the United States and Germany. He believes important links have been missing from basic training procedures and that a new approach is needed.
I think it's given us a sensitivity to human factors and to individual differences in training. And I think what we'd be trying to avoid is the recipe approach to flight training, in which there's been a traditional preparation of flight instructors and consequently of students to flying, I guess, over the past decades. What we need at this stage, we're producing pilots for the 21st century. I think what we need is an educational component as well as a training component.
Once again, hundreds packed out the Griffith Duncan Theatre at the CAE to watch how it's done pint-size. Because of the success of last year's inaugural production, organisers are now planning that the event be held every year. 33 schools, including infants, primary and high schools, were selected to perform in the non-competitive festival after auditioning. Today's matinee featured multicultural dances performed by the students of Hamilton Primary and Gateshead High. For Newcastle, Maitland and Whitebridge High Schools, the show is just a warm-up to the state's secondary dance festival in Sydney next month, where they'll represent the talent from the Hunter region. Dancing is now a popular elective throughout secondary schools. Curtains to the festival will open again tonight and tomorrow for both matinee and evening performances.
Hello, I'm Jane Button. Tonight I'll be reporting on the official opening by Premier Unsworth of this new Visitors Information Centre here at the Fisheries Research Station at Salamander. Premier Unsworth says seafood is going to be a major new Australian export industry.
For all the news, join us tonight at 6.
In this transient modern society, it's become a rarity for people to stay in the one job for too long. But not so for 4 men who were honoured today at a ceremony at the Urban Transit Authority in Hamilton. One of the men, Dan Callaghan, started work when the steam trams were still chugging along the Newcastle tracks.
The buses have taken over from the trams, but I still have a little nostalgic feeling towards them. And the buses have gone to bigger and better things.
The employees from each of the 4 divisions who have served the shortest time also received certificates and medals. Bus oiler Jack Campton, who's worked for the UTA for almost 50 years, the longest of any of its employees in Newcastle, says he's looking forward to the next 100 years of public transport in Newcastle.
I'd like to thank the Transit Authority for recognising the fact that the staff in Newcastle and Beaumont do a really good job, and I hope it continues that way over the next 100 years. That's all I've got to say.
It was a day neither the coal companies nor the mine workers were looking forward to. By the end of it, just over 1,000 jobs in the northern coalfields had either been lost or were under threat, the majority through retrenchment, the rest by early retirement. The North's biggest employer, Coal and Allied, shed about 500 jobs, including 16 positions at its Richmond Vale Railway. Other major job losses have occurred at BP's Hazeldean Colliery and the CSR Esso-owned Leamington No. 2 operation. Today at Coal and Allied's Chain Valley Colliery near Doyleson, 107 retrenchment notices were handed out. And, not surprisingly, the mood among the workforce was subdued.
It's just not good at all. I know I'm out the gate.
No one's real happy, you know. They've all got commitments to make, and this is your lifeblood here, working here.
Obviously we're a bit disappointed at the way things are going, but as I said, there's nothing we can do about it.
I've been in 32 years, and we went through this in the 60s when we had our families growing up and paying off houses, and same situation all over.
I got 6 years with it. 5 years and 9 months, and I missed out on 3 months, and I'd have me long service leave paid up, but I missed out on that. So
what are you going to do?
Go on the dole, try and find work around here.
It's just a matter of taking it, and with a bit of luck, we might get back employed into the industry.
Go roll with the punches, mate. That's all you can do.
Jeff Brown from the Northern Branch of the Miners Federation says aggregate meetings of mine workers will be held next week and negotiations with employers will continue.
We've been more than cooperative over the years. The big cause is still, as we believe, the inability of the Australian marketing people to negotiate prices for an Australian coal.
Meantime, commenting in Newcastle today, State Opposition Leader Nick Greiner said the Unsworth government acted too late in reducing coal royalty charges.
I mean, the ultimate insult was handing out a reduction in royalties for the next year, 2 days before they knew 100% that there were going to be significant redundancies.
Today's public meeting at Warners Bay was planned to introduce the 23 independent candidates to the voters. This time round, the independents hope to be a stronger force in the local election and have rallied together on a block ticket for each of the 4 wards. 6 of the independent aldermen will stand for re-election, with Aldermans Fennell and Welsh contesting the mayoral vote. Supported by the Bolton Marmont Point Progress Association and the Toronto Chamber of Commerce, the independents say they hope to move the Labor bloc that now exists within the council. And spokesman for the campaign, Bill Jones, believes the bicentennial multi-purpose centre at Spears Point will be a major issue, condemned by all candidates in the lead up to the election in 4 weeks' time.
There is not one independent on the ticket that would support the multi-purpose centre in its present state. Now, the need for a multi-purpose centre is probably a very real one, but the way it's been handled by the Labor bloc is not to the interests of the community. There are no projected running costs. There are no projections of income. The facilities will not provide for the truly multi-purpose activity that the hall is supposedly designed for. It's just inadequate. And this is a major point of the independents in their campaign for council.
Next year's Feast of Sydney Football in Newcastle is expected to attract crowds far in excess of yesterday's grand final attendance. It's the entry into the Sydney competition next year that the Newcastle League believes was partly responsible for yesterday's unexpected big crowd.
The interest that's been created already by the Knights' participation in the Winfield Cup is starting to rub off on rugby league supporters in Newcastle. But outside of that, the nostalgia of going back to the sports ground and the teams that were in it, Lakes and South, have battled all the year. They're both excellent football teams, and they proved that with the standard of game they produced in the grand final.
Although crowds in excess of 20,000 are expected to Knights' home games at the International Sports Centre, Mr Hard says this won't affect the local competition.
I think the indications yesterday showed what's going to happen to the local competition. A lot of our major knockers have said that the competition in Newcastle will fall by the wayside, and here we see only 5 or 6 months before the Knights are playing in the competition that we have one of our most successful grand finals for many years. So straight away that gives us the indication that the local competition will remain very strong. We've got a huge amount of talented young footballers out there, and the competition will hold at least to what it was in 1987.
A replay of yesterday's grand final highlights can be seen on NBN from 10:30 tonight, before the replay of the Parramatta-Penrith game.
This antique shop directly opposite Robertson's Brothers in Maitland Road, Mayfield, was severely damaged by the southwesterly gusts that reached speeds of up to 120 kilometres per hour at around 6:45 last night. The iron roof was plucked from the structure, some of it landing metres away. Debris laid strewn across the highway. The state emergency team worked desperately to secure an alternative covering to protect the contents of the shop from further damage caused by the storm. In a path from Morisset to Seaham, emergency crews rallied to clean up the damage left by fallen trees and power lines. No injuries were reported. It was a busy schedule for the Minister for Public Works and Ports on his visit to Newcastle, beginning with the official opening of the new recreational boating service office. Housed in the existing Maritime Services Board premises, the Minister said it will provide waterway users with access to information and assistance previously only available in Sydney. The Minister also announced that $500,000 has been allocated to the upgrading of navigational aids for recreational boating on the Central and North Coasts. And even more good news was at hand when he revealed the state government's decision to freeze all boating charges until at least the end of the financial year. Then it was out to Carrington Slipways, where well-known community worker Ted Knopfs was honoured in an unusual way, with the launching of the Maritime Services Board's new tug, the Ted Knopfs. The vessel is the first of 3 emergency firefighting units being built at Carrington Slipways. They carry the latest equipment designed to protect the state's ports from fire, oil spills and potential disasters. Still recovering from a severe stroke, the tug's namesake was absent, but it was Mrs Margaret Knopfs who had the honour of launching the first stage of the MSB's $9 million project. When the bottle refused to crack the first time, a few adjustments were needed, until the Ted Knopfs was officially sent on its way, bound for the port of Botany Bay.
The aim of Neighbourhood Watch Marine is to reduce the incidence of theft and vandalism on the waterfront. Last financial year, marine property worth nearly $7 million was stolen in New South Wales, with more than $2 million of that in the Hunter Central Coast area. The program has been formulated by the New South Wales Police and Maritime Services Board around the ICOMIA hull and identification numbering system. It's this identifying of all marine property with a number that is expected to deter thieves and vandals.
It's proactive policing where we're encouraging people to know one another around the waterfront, especially in concentrated areas of moored craft, where people can really identify their property well, know who's around them and deter the thieves from hopping on board and going through all the property and taking what they like.
The first Neighbourhood Watch Marine was set up at Middle Harbour in Sydney during July, and the first in the Hunter will be set up at Port Stephens early next month. The Maritime Services Board will have its promotional caravan at Nelson Bay over the Labor Day long weekend, explaining the concept before a public meeting on the 6th of October. The marine version of Neighbourhood Watch is expected to be operating in the Newcastle and Lake Macquarie areas early next year.
Until last week, Ross Ingram had little in mind except preparation for the end-of-year exams. All that changed, however, last Tuesday, when he was told he'd won the New South Wales Aboriginal Youth of the Year title. If that wasn't enough of a surprise, on Friday the news came through that he would have to travel to Perth in September to accept the national award as well. Originally from Leeton near Griffith, friends back home had nominated Ross without his knowledge. The Aboriginal Youth of the Year awards are handed out annually to persons under 21 who are judged to have made a positive contribution to society and are an example to other young Aboriginal people. In Perth, Ross will be presented with a specially struck commemorative medal by the Federal Minister for Aboriginal Affairs, Jerry Hand. Ross says while he feels privileged to receive the award, he believes it's much more important as an encouragement to others.
It just goes to show that once given the chance that Aboriginal people can do what their ambitions are, no matter how high the goal is.